I want to make a little bit of a connection here, and you tell me if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. Feel free to speak your mind. So Jim Brown passes away, and what I said remains to be what I believe, which is he's in any conversation of the greatest athlete in the history of American sports. And he was a civil rights advocate and activist. He was also an actor, and he helped keep the peace in Los Angeles between the Bloods and the Crips. But it is not a perfect story because he was abusive, physically abusive that's his ex-wife, right? His ex-spouse, because he's married at the time of his death, but I think it was his ex-wife. And I was thinking about this at the time and trying to help, and I didn't put it on social media because it deserves a longer explanation. But one of the mistakes that we make or especially the younger generation makes is they speak about the past through the lens of the present. Right? And that's why they've taken down some of the names of our forefathers from schools in the country because this guy was a slave owner. This guy said something. I remember when Joe Biden was running for president, President Biden was running for president, that there was some video from like 30 years ago of him talking about something. It's like what you don't understand was the context of the day. And I am not in any way saying that abusing child, a woman, even another guy, right, is okay. Like, keep your hands to yourself, people. But I should point out that, you guys remember the show The Honeymooners? The show The Honeymooners?
Yep.
Okay. Jackie Gleason was the male star, Ralph Cramden. What was his wife's name? Was it Alice?
That's correct, Alice.
I want to say it was Alice. What was the actress's name?
Audrey Meadows.
Audrey Meadows. Do you remember what there used to be in most shows, especially comedies, you'd have like a go-to saying, right? Remember when we were kids, there was different strokes and it was, what you talking about, Willis? Right? That was the Gary Coleman's line that he had. Well, Ralph Cramden's line was either I'm going to, to the moon, Alice, which means I'm going to hit you so hard, you're going to fly to the moon. Or, pow, right in the kisser, to the moon. And my point is not that it explains Ike Turner's behavior, James Brown's behavior. I mean, James Brown. Jim Brown's behavior. Okay. But we have evolved over time. And there was a time in our society where that was acceptable on the most popular television show in America. Right? The most popular television show in America. And the big funny line was, in the kisser to the moon. So you have to take the context of the day to understand how people acted and how we've evolved and how it's different today. Am I out of left field too much? You guys can reel me in if you want.
Yeah, I think you're out there on this one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm
not defending James Brown, but I'm trying to, instead of Jim Brown, but instead of saying, hey, Jim Brown's the worst human being ever because he was abusive towards his ex-wife, I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's an awful thing. But I can also point out that he was raised and there was a time in his life when it was viewed at completely differently than it is now. We're looking at it yesterday through the lens of today. That does not mean it was okay when he did it. It's not okay back in the day. It's not okay now. I'm just trying to paint a proper perspective as to how people grew up differently than they grow up now. Still in left field?
I think so.
Okay. We'll take it out of the podcast, I guess.
I think we'll clean it up in post. But yeah. No, I think the charges in 1999 where he made terrorist threats against his wife and vandalized her car and was later sentenced to jail and stuff. I mean, 1999.
Yeah, 1999 is past the.
Yeah, that's way past the.
Correct.
Yeah.
I thought there was something in the 80s.
I just remember in 99 that was close enough to the O.J. Simpson thing, and he was very outspoken about the O.J. thing.
Yes.
And I remember people calling him a hypocrite due to his past with women.
Yes. Fair. Very, very fair. Me, it was more I was watching maybe Nick at Night or one of those old TV shows, and I was like, I cannot believe this is on TV. I just can't believe that was a thing, and it was a thing. It's crazy. Maybe I need to update my shows that I'm watching and get back on watching Fauda and watching Succession. I'm big into Succession. God, I can't. If I look tired, that's why. But I also I also want to relate it to sports, which is we talk about so many different things with stats, and the example is LeBron James. How trying to in any way compare him to Jordan or any of the greats of the past when the game is different, it's played differently, it's taught differently, there's officiated differently, everything is different, and it's really hard to conceptualize and compare crimes of the past and sports of the past. I don't know. I had it working out in my mind. I don't know if I
think what maybe you were getting at too is there is there's this thing nowadays, especially with social media, that every time an important person passes away, there is that kind of honeymoon of just praise and what they did in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And then after that kind of wears away, then you see the articles about the negative stuff.
They really were.
And remember
when Steinbrenner died?
Yeah.
I did not do the falling at his feet about Steinbrenner dying because of what he had done to Dave Winfield. Right? So, and I felt a lot of pushback on that. They're like, hey, the guy just died. I'm like, all right, but everybody's acting like he's some saint because they won a bunch of World Series when he's roundly seen as a bad guy. Right? He was made into a comical character by Seinfeld, and then, then they won 4 World Series with Derek Jeter. But the truth is, this is a bad guy. Here's why he's a bad guy.
Didn't Lisa Leslie get into some trouble shortly after Kobe passed? She came out and brought up Eagle, Colorado. I think it was too soon after. And she even got a bunch of crap for it. There is this kind of social grace, I guess, you're supposed to give. And if you do it too soon, you get some criticism for it.
Well, the only way I can defend Kobe in that is that there was never a trial, so we didn't have full disclosure. We don't know, truly what the accusations, the details of them, or what his defense was. So I understand people go by the statement that he made, but I don't know what. A lot of times you make statements so that everything else goes away. And I understand that none of us who believe we did anything wrong would ever write a statement that admits to doing something wrong if we didn't think we did something wrong. But we've also never been in that sort of predicament to where you're like, look, dude, it's a lose, lose, lose. This is the least losing you will do. And, if you try to tell somebody that story now, when they know of Kobe's last 10 years of his career and last 15 years of his life, you would say, no way, that's him. Fair?
Interesting. Yeah.